Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brandon. I'm an ApplicantStack account manager with SwipeClock. We're really happy to have you on our broadcast today and have you in attendance. We're grateful for your interest in our products and for being users. And we are going to go ahead and wait for a few more people to sign on, as we've had some good response to this meeting, and we just want to give everybody a chance to get on. So we'll probably start the actual presentation about 2 after. Hello, my name's Brandon. I'm an account manager with ApplicantStack by SwipeClock. This is our onboarding webinar. We understand that all of you may be coming from various backgrounds and exposure levels to ApplicantStack. Our biggest product is our recruit software, and onboarding is a supplement to that, which makes onboarding much more simple. It creates a digital repository for your employee files. So we're going to talk about this product and how it can make your life easier as you try to grow your business. Again, my name is Brandon. I'm an account manager. I'm also joined by my other colleagues, Carol Kennedy and Ellen Benzine from the account manager department. And we just want you to know that we're here to help in any way. Again, as account managers, we want to help you grow your business. We want to help you understand the software so that the software actually becomes a tool instead of an obstacle. And so if you ever need any help, you can contact us by going to the link shown below and submitting a support ticket. Those get distributed to us, and we respond to those as timely as we can. Now, I do want to mention we have a couple additional upcoming events. We have the Ask Me Anything series. The next in that series is January 30th, and we'll be talking about recruit the best practices, followed by our February 8th Ask Me Anything. We'll be talking about candidate self-scheduling. So if you want to register for either of those, you can scan the QR code on your screen right now to register for that. And you can also see links to these events in the ApplicantStack announcements section. The ApplicantStack Recruit webinar is coming up on February 13th. And we're also going to be talking about Indeed, our Indeed integration. So again, you can scan the QR code to register for that one as well. So part of the theme for this call today is, with the new year, we want to talk about how to kind of create a new slate and help you get your processes up to speed, maybe do a bit of a review and fine tune some things within ApplicantStack if you're already using it. But also, if you're new to the product, this webinar should be helpful for you to understand how the product is used and how it can benefit your business. So we're going to talk about the importance of taking onboarding seriously for employee retention, how to organize your library for the new year, and how to personalize the onboarding experience for your new hires. We also have a new blog, our ApplicantStack blog. There's a post recently called the onboarding process, steps and checklists, and we're going to refer to that in our call today. Finally, we'll take some questions from you, and Carol and Ellen will help with those after the demo. So how does onboarding fit into your overall business strategy? Well, it helps establish a process that can be replicated and improved on. Without the foundation of the process, your folks may just be maybe shooting from the hip, so to say, and that can lead to a negative experience for your new hires. It's important to remember that the onboarding experience can set the tone for the new hire. They're going to be judging you from the first minute, and just like you're going to be judging them from the first minute you see them working. And so by having a formal onboarding process that you're able to replicate, and if you see opportunities for improvement you can then improve upon, that can really help with your new hires. It also establishes a foundation of trust. So when those new hires see a thorough, thoughtful process, that's going to make them feel comfortable working for you because they feel more confident that they're going to have the tools necessary and the training necessary to do the job. And for all those reasons, it can then lead to improved job performance, increased efficiency, and higher job satisfaction. So there are many steps to the onboarding process. This is a list of ideas. You can take some or leave some. You might want to add some others that we don't mention here. But what often people think of as the onboarding process is the paperwork. That's the most obvious piece. So this is where we're taking care of some very basic requirements, gathering tax forms, contact information, direct deposit, all the paperwork and information that we need to make this person one of our employees. And it's going to take some planning. So you need to create a plan that's organized and deliberate with frequent check-ins. So you're going to want to have multiple contact points with the new hire so that when questions arise, because we know that they will, we have opportunities to answer those questions before they become actual concerns. Introductions are important. It can create a friendly environment and it helps establish your culture with the new hire. So it helps and it connects the new hire with the team members and the broader workforce. There's also opportunity there as they meet people on the team for those team members to explain their role so that the new hire knows who to go to for what information. Questions can come up, and they will. And so as I mentioned, knowing the right people and having a formal process to ask those questions and get them answered can really set your new hire at ease. Shadowing. This is something that is often forgotten, but as we team our new hires up with someone else that's done that job or that is doing that job, it can really create a level of comfort with the new hire. They may ask their mentor questions that they might not otherwise ask their boss. And so that can be highly valuable. When we think about shadowing, it's usually done in person, but you could also consider doing it as a video conference if that fits in with your business model. Now, all of these interactions are going to create a more cohesive team. So by offering a formal or informal ways to introduce your people, they can build rapport with each other and unify around a common cause. Office equipment and software. So this is where we need to check out certain pieces of equipment, assign them to the new hire, but also get the licenses and logins and passwords up and running for the new hire. And with the way businesses are today, that can be quite a cumbersome process. There may be anywhere from 5 to 15 different logins for a new hire, depending on what your business is. And getting those secured and set up, it just can can be kind of time consuming. So having as much of that set up ahead of time can really be beneficial. I can speak from personal experience where I've started a job and I didn't have my email address set up for 3 days. It created a lot of frustration on my part, probably more from my boss's part, but having that up ahead of time is definitely going to show better for your business and give the new hire a better experience. Other opportunities to interact with your new hire would be by setting them up for those important communication tools. So Slack, Teams, calendars, their Google account, their Microsoft account, any tools you're using for video conferences, and that kind of thing. And then, of course, there's going to be the face-to-face meeting. Eventually, you're going to be meeting with the new hire. And again, the more frequent interactions, the better. But if your onboarding process is days or weeks long, having frequent check-ins along the way can be very helpful. Now, according to our recent blog post that I mentioned, only 32% of employers have a formal onboarding program. So think of the opportunity lost there by not having a formal program. Like I mentioned, I started with a job once and my email wasn't set up, a very basic function of the job. Now, if that had been set up, it certainly would have been better. It would have saved everybody time and frustration. So we really want to encourage you to think about this as the new year begins. How is your process now? Are there opportunities to improve it? And then again, like I mentioned, the blog, we'd encourage you to sign up for notifications about the blog and to check on it frequently for tips and tricks about how to use onboarding in ApplicantStack. So as a part of my demo today, we're going to talk about archiving old forms, importing new forms, and updating old forms with new branding. So it's just an opportunity, again, at the beginning of the year to look through what you have. There may be some stagnant forms that might be using some old branding or old logos. Things I've observed as an account manager are old addresses, old phone numbers from when the business maybe was at a different location. And so this is a good time to look at all that and just clean it up. As you personalize the onboarding experience, you might want to, again, double check your logos, make sure that you have an enticing message that's being sent out to your new hires. One thing that I've learned in my experience is to actually have my team review the messages that are going out to who would become their coworkers. So oftentimes messaging can maybe become a little bit stale if it's coming from higher up in the organization. And so having their colleagues, their cohorts review how that messaging sounds, how it feels, can be really beneficial so that it's coming across the right way and you're establishing the culture with the new hire. All right, give me a second here. I'm going to switch out of the PowerPoint and switch over to my demo account. So when you log into ApplicantStack, by default, it logs into the Recruit module. To switch from Recruit to Onboarding, you can go to this 9-square icon in the top right and toggle from Recruit to Onboarding. So right now I'm already on Onboarding, so I don't need to toggle, but I wanted to show you how to navigate to Onboarding first. And when you log in, you're going to see the pipeline summary. So this is essentially the different stages of your workflow with a number value of how many candidates are going to be sitting in that stage at any given point in time. So that can give you a good at-a-glance view of where you're at with your process. I also want to bring your eyes over to the right bar here. We call this our contextual menu. So this is going to change depending on what page of ApplicantStack we're on. And it's going to give us some quick functions that we might need to use while sitting on that page. Also, in the top right corner is our Help Center. So this orange box with the question mark. If I click on that, I can look at new features and updates. The Help Center is where we have our knowledge base and our library of help articles and guides. And then ask a question is how you would get in contact with us in the account management department and also the technical team. So by clicking ask a question, you'll be brought to this web form where you'll fill that out as completely as possible. We encourage you to give as much detail about your question or concern so that we can look into it before responding to you. And screenshots or even screen recordings can be extremely helpful for us and the technical team to troubleshoot your problem and better understand what you're needing. Okay, so if we back up a little bit in the process to the candidate coming from recruit, once they're moved into the hired stage on the recruit module, that's going to automatically bump them over to onboarding if you have an onboarding subscription. So when that action takes place, you will then see the hire show up on your hires tab as a new hire, and they're gonna land here in the new stage. Now the name of the stage can be adjusted for your needs, but by default it's going to be called the new stage. And the way my demo account is set up, it's kind of a dummy stage, meaning there's no actions that are taking place, no automations that are taking place, because we want to control when the candidate gets their paperwork sent to them. I do have some accounts that choose to have the paperwork automatically sent right at the first stage, and that's okay too. We'll talk about how to do that. So as I talk about stages, I want you to understand what we're talking about. Again, I realize that we have an audience here today that has various backgrounds. Some of you are already using onboarding or just looking at ways in how to improve it. Some of you might be brand new to onboarding or investigating using it. So I want to talk about how the process is built and then how you would use it. So before we jump into what the day-to-day would look like when we're using ApplicantStack onboarding, I want to show you how the foundation is built. So I'm going to go to setup. Excuse me, I want to go to the library first, apologize. So when we go to the library, this is where all of our templates are housed. So we use templates in order to easily replicate a process so that we don't have to do it and manually do it every time. So the first type of template is a form template. So this is like, forgive me for using another company, but like essentially the DocuSign, where you can digitally sign a PDF style form for putting into the candidate's new hire paperwork packet. So let's look at one of these. So here's one for drug policy. I'm going to click on that. And we'll see here, there's an example substance abuse policy. So there's the legalese, some contact information, and then there's a date field that the candidate would need to insert. And as we scroll down to the bottom, we're finally going to see where the employee would sign, print, and date the form. So you might have 10 forms that would need to be added to this, or maybe 100, but those would live here in the form section of the library. And so while I'm here, I want to show you how to upload a form and format it for those digital signatures. So right now I have in here the Acme onboarding form example. So I'm going to click on that. And this is just a basic example. And so here we have where the employee would sign and date, and then where the employer would sign and date. Now, again, as we approach the new year here, we perhaps have some updated branding. So our name hasn't changed, but maybe we have a new logo that we put some effort into, and we want to make sure that that logo is used appropriately. So I can go to Edit Form. And see here where I can move around the different fields if I need to. I can assign them either to the hire or make it a field that needs to be assigned to the employer. If we are using a hire and employer field, then we need to make sure we assign the form as such. Okay, so now, like I said, let's say that this branding is old and we want to replace it. So I'm going to go back to the library and I'm going to add a form. What this does is it brings up an upload option. And I'll select from my desktop the appropriate form. So I have the old one, here's the new one. I open that up and I click next. And then after a few seconds, we'll see here that ApplicantStack has imported that PDF for me to now format as a fillable form. So I'll make this a hire than employer because we know it requires both signatures. And on the left here, you'll see the different shortcuts for the types of fields. So we have single line text, multi-line text like paragraph form, signature, which will be used a lot, a date, drop down, multiple choice, checkbox, label, and file. So for this example, I want to insert a field for the employee to sign. And so I'll just click on this signature option and drag it over to the appropriate spot. And now I'm faced with some options in how to format this field correctly. I can change the name if I'd like. It's already assigned as a signature, so that's correct. I do want to make it required, meaning the candidate won't be able to, excuse me, the hire won't be able to proceed or save it unless they actually sign it. For certain fields, we might want to use the autofill option. A field like address, for example, we already have the candidate's address, and so as we present them with a form, it's very helpful and speeds up the process if we autofill that address for them. It's important to know that when things autofill, the candidate can overwrite that, so they can change it or update it to something different if they want. But by and large, you should already have the correct contact information. But as I click on Show Merge Codes, these are some of the options we have. A lot of different options from the hire's record. We also have options, if I keep scrolling, from the account data, so the name of the organization, the company address, phone number, etc. And then there's also some general data, which most of these are time-based, so the date, the year, the day of the week, etc. Now, since this is the employee signature, we want to make sure that the form group is going to be hire. Okay, and then I'll just save that. I also want to put in a date field. So I'm going to drag over here the date, edit that, make sure we've got it correct. We've got the required field. We want it to be required. And I am going to go ahead and auto-populate the date by putting in the autofill. And the form group is already assigned to hire, so that looks correct to me. Now let's do the employer signature line. So again, I'm just going to click here, drag down, and place it. But now instead of assigning this to the form group hire, I want this field to be assigned to the employer. I'm going to make it required and save that. And then duplicate that process with the date for the hire, excuse me, for the employer. Okay, so that's creating a form in a nutshell. Now we created this form for the purpose of updating the logo, but you might have other forms that you need to upload, and that's the process to do that. Okay, so now I save that form, and now it will see that it's in our library here. But I don't want anybody confused by the old example. And so what I'm going to do is take this old example, I'll select it this way, and then I want to archive it. I'm not deleting it, I'm just archiving it. So now on my list here, We're only showing current forms that we're using. Now, also within the library, we have questionnaires. So questionnaires can be a shortcut to using a form. The examples given here are like a uniform sizing worksheet. We may not always need to put in a PDF form, something that when we're asking for information. So using the questionnaire is a shortcut to that. If I click on the uniform sizing worksheet, we'll see that this is just generated within ApplicantStack. They can select the proper information. It's not a legal document. They just need to submit that information so that we know what they need. Next is messages. So messages, these can be either emails or text messages that are being sent out to the hire. And of course, communication is important here. So you would draft your messages by creating a template. You're going to give it a name. You can select whether you want this message to go from a particular ApplicantStack user with it being assigned to them so they will see it, or we can make it a system email or message. And so that's going to be something where they can't actually reply to it. It'll be a no reply type email. We can make attachments to the messages, and then we would give it a name. And we can even set a delay. So if we want this message to be sent immediately, then we just leave it at the default setting. But we can also set delays in increments up to, up to a year away. We can set those delays. So here's where we would draft that message and explain to the candidate the information we need to communicate and save that for further use later. Okay. Now tasks. So tasks are often internal facing. They can be assigned to the hire or the manager, but since we used the example of the questionnaire earlier for uniform sizing, let's use that task as an example here. So once the candidate submits their uniform sizing questionnaire, then we're going to need somebody to come in here and order that uniform. Obviously, that's not something you do directly within ApplicantStack, but by creating a task, we keep our hiring team accountable to make sure that they are doing all these steps so that all our new hires have everything that they need. Also, to reference an example we used earlier, this might be where you want to assign a task like issuing a laptop or issuing a workstation, issuing them a company phone. Those are all examples of tasks that you might want to create within onboarding. All right, next is checklists. So this is kind of the next step in creating our foundation for the automated workflow. And so here I have the new hire forms checklist as an example. We can create multiple checklists, and some use cases there might be if you have maybe a frontline team member that has a certain set of forms that need to be completed, but maybe for an office executive, you're going to have a different process for them. And so for that reason, you might want to have a different checklist template for those different types of roles. For today, we're just going to look at this by editing it, and we'll see two columns here. The column on the left are tasks and forms that are available in the library. The column on the right are the forms and tasks that we have taken from the library and assigned to this particular checklist. So we make changes to this by clicking on the form or task and just dragging it over to our list. We can reorder these any way we'd like by clicking and dragging. And we could also take items off if we want and just leave them in the library. Once we click save, then this becomes the checklist. All right, so we've built questionnaires, we've built forms, we've built messages and tasks, and now we've bundled those together into a checklist. So the next step in setting all this up would be to go to Setup, Configure, and then we're going to drill into the Hire workflow. Now, it is important to note that these are administrator actions. So if you're just going to be a hiring manager within ApplicantStack Onboarding, you're not going to have to know how to do this, but it might still be helpful to understand the bones of onboarding. So we'll look at the default hire workflow here. And we'll see here every stage we have in our onboarding workflow. I spoke earlier about the new stage. So there's nothing happening here. There's no actions, no automations. It's just a holding stage for the candidate as they come over from Recruit. Now next would be the paperwork stage in my example. So in the paperwork stage here, you'll see there are a couple of automations. The first one is sending the candidate the welcome to the hiring process message. And this message is built both as an email and as a text message because we have premium texting here. So the email, I can hover over that to look at that. The text message has a little bit different text, but essentially they're bundled together as one message. And so they would both go out at the same time. Now, when the candidate gets this email, it's going to invite them to use their email that they provided. It's going to give them a password, and then it's also going to give them the link to the hiring portal where they can complete all these forms. Now, if I were to send out this email without a checklist assigned, they would log in and they'd have nothing to do. So also in the paperwork stage, we are assigning a checklist, which is the new hire forms checklist that we were talking about a couple minutes ago. I can drill into this particular stage by clicking on Edit Workflow Stage. And now we'll see all the different configuration options I have. Now at this point, your head might be spinning. Again, if you're already used to onboarding, you might be up to speed. But I do want to stop here and pause and just say that if you are having further questions or getting lost, we do have additional help guides in the Help Center, great videos and demos that you can refer to. And then, of course, me, Carol, and Ellen are all available to help get you up to speed. So here's where I would set the message settings, and I can select which message I want. In this case, we want the welcome to the hiring message. And then the trigger stage is a little bit nuanced. So this is where we can say, we only want this particular message to go out when they enter the paperwork stage if they come from some other stage, if they come from training, or if they come from the new stage. And so that can be helpful in certain use cases. I don't think I'm going to drill into that, but just know that that's what this option is. We can define which stage they're coming from in order to trigger this message. All right, and then here's where we would also assign our checklist. Okay, we can assign one checklist here. And so if we need to make changes to those forms, we would make those within the checklist itself. We can make adjustments to the user settings, who owns this stage and who gets notified when a candidate moves into the stage. And then lastly, we can make changes to the fields. So these are fields that are that the ApplicantStack user is prompted to complete as they move a candidate into this stage. So close that. So each stage in the workflow has all of those options. Okay, so the options are limitless. There's just so much that you can do here. And again, we are here to help walk you through that and consult with you to make sure that your workflow is set up the way you want it to be. All right, so let's see this in practice. We've talked about how to get there. We've talked about the foundation. So once that's all established, then what? What does it look like to use onboarding day to day? So I'm going to go to the hire stage. And we have new hire number 2 here. No tasks have been assigned because those are assigned at the paperwork stage. And hire number 2 is still in the new stage. So I'll click here. And we'll see the basic information that hire 2 has in here. Most likely this was imported from Recruit and their application. So we'll see here now, there's an option to move hire 2 into the paperwork stage. So what's going to happen? They're going to get a message and they're going to get assigned the checklist. When I do that, we'll see the message here It's telling me what it's going to do. It's telling me it's going to send it immediately and which checklist is going to be assigned to them. So I'll just go ahead and confirm that stage change. And now you'll see the forms from my checklist have all been dumped into this candidate record. So what does the candidate see? Well, after they get that message and they sign in, and they would use the temporary password and then create their own password. And once they sign into that portal, we can see that by clicking on this shortcut in the contextual menu. It says View Portal. So when the candidate logs in, this is what they would see. They would see their information here, information about their manager, general information, and then the tasks that need to be completed. So if I look at this W4, start that task, and you'll see that the information that I've already provided has already been auto-populated. So that to me as a new hire is just a relief. You know, let's say I interviewed with the company last year and hypothetically they weren't using ApplicantStack and I had to type in my address 15 different times for every form. So this can be really helpful, but there are some options that aren't going to autofill. So for this W4, I'm still going to have to decide what my tax status is going to be, and then I'm just going to sign it and date it. You'll see that this is auto-populated as the 16th. And I will save that and submit it. Oops. So that's an example of a required field. So it caught me here. The social security number is a required field, so it's telling me I can't proceed unless I fill that out. Okay, so let's try that again. And then we can just go to the next task. So let me close out of this piece. And now we'll see, if I refresh the page for the hires record, we'll see that they have completed. So the W4 is no longer a hire task, it's now a user task. Okay, the employer has to sign it as well. But because the employee or the hire has completed their piece, now it's bumped down here as a user task. And so now I'm impersonating a hiring manager. So I'm going to see this and I see, okay, they've completed their W4. And so now I have to go in and complete my side of that. All of the fields that the hire filled out are not fields that I can touch now because those are assigned to them. I'll see that they've signed it, they've dated it, and now this option is available to me. Okay, so now that both I and the hire have completed it, this now becomes a completed form and cannot be edited. I can view it, but now that it's been completed, it cannot be edited. So what happens if either I or the hire made a mistake? Well, that's okay. We can just assign the form to them manually again, so they would have a duplicate W4 and ask them to complete it again. But why don't we want them to edit this one? Well, it could be that we don't recognize that error for maybe 30 days. And in order to stay compliant with HR regulations and rules, we want to at least show that in good faith, we had them fill it out on time. And then once we recognize the error, we had them fill it out again a month later. And so instead of just completely overwriting the original document, we want to save that as a paper trail and just assign a new document to them. Now there's some other important options here that I want to point out on the hire record. So we'll see completed questionnaires, we'll see assigned supporting documents. Those are, a supporting document might be like a benefits guide that's many pages long, but not something that the candidate actually has to sign. We'll also see messages that have been sent to the candidate. So there's a good record there, a bit of an audit trail, and then some notes. These are internal facing. So if I want to make a note to one of the other hiring managers or just make a note on this record, I can do that. And then we'll also see the history, the types of actions that have taken place to the hire. So we'll see here that the hire was added earlier today, and we see when they were moved to the paperwork stage. And when that happened, they were assigned the checklist and everything else that happened in that stage. Okay, well, I think we've covered enough about onboarding for today. Again, there's a lot to chew on here if you're new, but me, Carol, and Ellen are here to help explain more, and there's also helpful resources in the Help Center. If I go to the Help Center, we can see that there are some onboarding and recruit videos. So if I had a new user that had never used onboarding, I would probably first refer them here to the Getting Started with Onboarding video. And then once they've done that, then I would have them look at the Getting Started guide, which is more of a manual type reference manual. And so if they have further questions, they can go there. Additionally, if neither of those cover the questions that they're looking at, they can just search for the topic. So if I put in new form, I'm going to get results of different articles that are going to talk about how to update a form, how to import them into your library, how to archive forms, etc. Okay. So again, I want to bring your eyes and attention to our upcoming events. We have, that I mentioned earlier, our Ask Me Anything series is continuing. The next one is January 30th about recruiting best practices, and then one on February 8th, candidate self-scheduling. And then we have another recruit webinar next month on February 13th. If you want to go ahead and register for those in this moment, you can just scan the QR code and that will bring you to the registration page. But now we will go ahead and move on to the question section. And again, want to thank you for your attention. And we'll open up the call now for your questions. Just go ahead and type them into the questions section of the GoToWebinar interface, and we'll take those questions in order. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon. That was a great overview. Just a reminder that these questions can be related to anything ApplicantStack. They don't have to be specific to the topics we just explored. Okay, we'll give everyone just a minute. We do have a question. There were some forms that were updated for 2024. Brandon, when will those be available?
Okay, great. Yes, let me open up. There we go. So if you are looking for a new form, like a 2024 federal form, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Carol, but I believe those are already updated. So if you need them imported into your account, we in the account management department can help with that. And so just contact us, put in a support ticket, and we would just go to the library and import it. Now, Carol, do they have this option to import from the federal or state libraries?
Yeah, so if you go to, let me go ahead and minimize my GoToWebinar panel. Yep, if you go to import form, select the library.
So I'm being shown these because I'm a super user. You're not going to see all of these options, but you would just select the federal forms.
Right, exactly. And then the 2024 W4, there's an example. I believe all the state ones should be out there as well. If we're missing anything, it's because we're waiting on that state for feedback. So those will be uploaded as soon as they are available.
Okay.
And you can, I'm popping in too. Hello, everybody. This is Ellen. If you go back there to import form and you specify the state library versus the federal library, Brandon, you'll see those state tax forms that have been updated thus far. You scroll all the way down, I believe. There you go.
All right, great.
Yeah, so any administrator can import any of those forms that are ready for use.
All right, another question that just came in is, can we manually add a hire to onboarding if they weren't processed in Recruit? And the answer is yes. So if you weren't using Recruit, or if it's just somebody that you need to add, we can do that from the Hires tab. You'll see in the top right here, we have Add Hire, and that's actually how I added new hire number 2. So you just fill this out, put in as much information as you can, so that, again, it's going to auto-populate those forms later on. You'll be glad you did. You'll be glad you took the time to put in this information from the outset. And then we assign them to a workflow. Again, in my example, I only have one, but you might have multiple workflows. And then I also assign which stage I want them to start in. So I might just want to go ahead and start them in the paperwork stage or the new stage. And if I assign them in the paperwork stage, I have the option to decide if I want all those email triggers to be sent out when they enter that stage. If I uncheck that and put them in the paperwork stage, they're not going to get the welcome to the hiring process email. And then we also have an option to assign them to a manager. All right.
Hey, Brandon, we have another question. It's on the recruit side, so I'm going to ask you to flip on over. Question is reduce candidate flow. And we're aware with the holidays, sometimes there is a slowdown in the number of applicants coming in, but is there anything that we can do to give our job more visibility and drive more candidates to the system? Indeed, specifically. Indeed tends to be a big one.
Yeah, Indeed is a big one. And one of the unique things about Indeed as a job board is that it does have a free option. So there's an organic feed within Indeed, which is great. But those do, as you post to Indeed organically, those jobs do fall down further down in the search results as they age. And so you might want to consider creating a paid campaign to advertise that job. So I'm going to go to the jobs here. And I'll use the example of Director of Public Relations. This job now has already been launched. So it's open, it's live, it's already posted to Indeed, to my main job board, and to LinkedIn. But if I go into this and I go to the Launch tab, I will see here, once this has been posted to Indeed, and again, because this is a demo account, I don't have it linked to an actual Indeed account. But what would be different for you is you would see this sponsored job option, and it would be highlighted in blue. You'd be able to click on that. Let me switch over to the Help Center because it does have a good example of what that looks like. So, all right, so in this article, you'll see the screenshots of what that would look like. Again, the job has already been posted organically. There is sometimes a waiting period of 4 to 8 hours for Indeed to review that. But once it's reviewed and live, this would say posted, and then we would then see the option to sponsor the job. So once you click on sponsor job, you'll be presented with a login screen for Indeed. One common error that sometimes happens is people might be logged in to their own employee or their own personal Indeed account. And if that's the case, it can cause the system to get confused. So make sure you clear out of that, you sign out of that, and that you're signed in to your employer account so that you can create this campaign. So you click there, you'd be faced with the login page to link to Indeed. And then once you've logged in, then you'll be faced with this screen that gives you the option to create the campaign. Campaigns can be done as a one-time campaign with a set end date, or they can also be created as a monthly reoccurring campaign where you set some monthly budget. Say I were to set a monthly budget of $400, approximately $100 a week. That doesn't mean I'm committing to spend $400 that month. I'm telling Indeed that I want you to try and get me the candidates for that value. But if after 1 week I find that I'm getting too many candidates, I can go in and drop my campaign budget amount, and I'm only going to be charged for the actual candidates who clicked or applied on that job. So if you're just starting out with using Indeed sponsorship, that might be something you want to play around with. You can set the budget high and kind of drop it down low as you evaluate it from a day to day until you find that sweet spot. I would also add, it's something that you want to keep an eye on because there's seasonality. There's, maybe you have a new competitor in town that's also paying for these campaigns. So you want to keep a close eye on how many candidates you're getting so that you can adjust your budget accordingly.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Brandon. Okay, next question. Do you have a training portal that can be used instead of using your main application? For example, putting in test applicants clutters your application, especially if you are training several employees, even if you delete the test information.
Okay, so they're asking for some kind of sandbox to do training. No, there isn't. If you could maybe follow up in the question section of what clutter you're talking about. It sounds like you know that you can delete the candidate after you put in some dummy candidate, which is true. But what other things might be fouling you up? That's something that we might be able to talk about one-on-one of how to do that. Maybe you're worried about it skewing some reports or something else, but we don't have a dedicated sandbox option for new users, unfortunately. But that's a great feature request. That's something that we could put in as a feature request to hopefully make it on our roadmap someday.
Okay. Brandon, while we're on the recruit side, if you could just show the trigger stage from recruit to onboard, or just address what that stage is, what that stage is named. You may have covered that earlier, but just where we know how to get.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I didn't show it, but I did mention it. So for this, let's see, in my demo here, the default is the hired stage. So I'm going to go to my configuration of my application workflow, and we'll see here that the hired stage, this is a system stage, so it by default it should be in your account. But this is the stage that would push the candidate over to onboarding. And if I were to do that, let's see. Then there's a pop-up and it asks me, what onboarding workflow the candidate should be assigned to. So again, this is going to draw from my onboarding side and the different workflows I might have configured. And it's also going to draw from my onboarding managers. So at this stage, it knows I'm going to be moving this candidate to onboarding. And so it asks me for that additional detail. And once I confirm that change, his current stage will now say hired. And then I should be able to switch over to onboarding and see his hire record. And there he is. Okay, great question.
Thank you, Brandon. Not seeing any other questions come through. Maybe if we give everyone just a few more seconds to go ahead and put those in. But we may be able to give everyone just a few minutes back in their day. Okay, I think we've answered everything, which is great. So,
that's great.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for attending today. Just as a reminder, we have some upcoming sessions coming. Brandon had addressed those. Those are on the announcement section of your screen. So we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Great, thank you.